Hello and welcome to the second big game preview of the 2025 Guinness Men's Six Nations Championship as Ireland travel to Murrayfield to take on fellow title contenders Scotland. I know. I can't believe we're saying it either. I'm joined tonight by three expert fans and podcasters, Patricia Vieira and Tom Coleman, are regulars to the channel. We also have a debutant and a Scotland fan walks amongst us, and a Glasgow fan walks amongst us. Jonny McGinty is here as well. Johnny,
Boo.
I'll let you start. Firstly, you're welcome to the show. Just how much ammo have you packed in tonight to get out there?
Uh, no, I'm doing all right. I love an Ireland week. I think we spoke about this earlier in the week. Um, so I've been going steady since like Tuesday morning. It's really just like a continuation. I might ramp it up a little bit. I invoked Casement Park at 8 o'clock on Tuesday morning, so I've been getting full into Ireland week for quite a long time.
It's like preparing yourself for a big session. It's like, yeah, kind of phase myself in there. I got used to it. Tom, it's always a week that brings in that bit of, I'm not going to say bitterness, but the usual talking points, the kind of, oh, Scotland are arrogant is one of them. Oh, Peter Mahoney against Scotland, as you have there on your
Right.
screen.
I've been using hashtag Scottish arrogance klaxon all week. Don't maybe pull it out after like 35 seconds.
I mean, I had to reference it though. That's the thing. Not a lot of it will make a difference though, Tom. But this is a game that, regardless, it's going to be framed as a big one because Ireland are chasing history, and we'll get onto all that later. Scotland just have not done it against Ireland. It's as big for them as it is for Ireland, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like as Johnny pointed out, it wouldn't be Ireland or Scotland week without all the hashtags with Scottish arrogance and 10 in a row or just, yeah, World Cups and whatever the case may be. So yeah, look, it's massive for, Scotland really second game at home in a row. I don't know who helped them with the draw, having two home games first off, but that goes without saying. And yeah, look, it's a massive game for both. Obviously, Ireland are going for a three-peat. It hasn't been done in the Six Nations in that time. And you really Scotland's it was a monkey. It's now a gorilla. I don't know what sort of a King Kong on the back of their back now for this five Six Nations, not since '99. So um, maybe this weekend for Scotland will be the start. I don't know if it will be, but yeah, it's massive for both.
The phrase we always come back to is Scotland can beat anyone on their day, the emphasis on the can. But we're only saying these things because we know Johnny can take it and he is sure to throw them out across the episode. For anyone who's new, because we've had an influx of new listeners, what we're going to do is we'll start with the Irish team, look at all that, then move on to Scotland. And the Irish 23, of course, midweek we saw Joe McCarthy and Tyke Furlong ruled out, while the bench is headlined by Gary Ringrose, Jack Crowley, Ryan Baird, Dan Sheehan, who are all there again. The full matchday 23 is as follows: it's Hugo Keenan at fullback, Mac Hansen and James Lowe on the wings, with the former Connacht centre pairing of Robbie Henshaw and Bundy Aki in midfield. James Gibson Park and Sam Prendergast are the halfbacks again. It's Andrew Porter, Ronan Kelleher, and Finlay Bealham in the front row. James Ryan and Tyke Byrne in second row. Peter O'Mahony is back in at blindside flanker alongside Caelan Doris, who is captain, and Josh van der Fleer. The bench sees, of course, Dan Sheehan try scorer last week, Cian Healy, Tom Clarkson, Ryan Baird, Jack Conan, Conor Murray, Jack Crowley, and Gary Ringrose. Patricia, I'm going to bring you in here. I don't know if this is a dangerous question to ask as to what catches your eye from the lineup, because I think I know what positions you're going to go straight for. But what catches your eye for this Irish 23?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of find it hard to talk about Ireland teams sometimes. I think you kind of know that as well. It's just like there's nothing that can be said about these 23 players that hasn't been said 100 times over the past sort of 4 or 5 years. Like it is all the same players. Um, I look, do you want me to talk about who's playing at 10? I feel like that's the thing everyone talks about. And I'm sure you talked about it last week as well. Like, is it who I would have picked? No, but it's obviously who they're picking, and that's, you just gotta live with that. But yeah, it's the same team as last week, essentially. Like I like Henshaw and Aki together. I'm a huge fan of that. I thought Henshaw was very good off the bench last week. And Aki's one of those players that seems to sort of defy age and time and space. It's just like, oh, he's 107 years old, but he's still class. He's still like player of the match against England kind of level. Um, but other than that, like obviously Peter O'Mahony coming back in, that's kind of my captain always. So like it's nice to see him back in there, especially against, you know a team with a load of Glasgow players in it, you got to have Peter O'Mahony in there, and that's just a fact almost at this stage. So it'll be nice to see, over-unders on how many minutes into the match it takes for something like Tom's background to start happening again in this one. But like the team itself, it's just the same. Like it's, we know what those 23 players can do because we've seen them do it so many times.
For anyone who doesn't know or is listening on the audio version as opposed to YouTube, Tom's background is of Peter O'Mahony and Duan van der Merwe having words during the 2023 World Cup. I'll try to share it on my socials for anyone who doesn't see it. But Jonny, like Patricia said it all there. There's nothing that can be said about this Irish team that we haven't said before. Like Tom Clarkson is the player with the least amount of caps, I think, and Sam Prendergast. But one of those has been spoken about for the last, what is he, 21? Last 25 years, I feel like at this stage, or at least that's how it feels. So there's not a lot we can say, but at the same time, like it's still a decent Irish team, even if they are more gettable than they were, say, maybe 2 years ago, last time to get from Murrayfield.
Yeah, look, as far as Leinster and Green goes, that's a good team. Like that's about as strong a team as probably you've got available. Peter O'Mahony's an interesting one. I have to say, by the way, I'm disappointed in you lot because I made like a throwaway shithouse joke about Peter O'Mahony on Blue Sky earlier this afternoon, and tons of Munster fans have bitten on it, and I thought better of you. See, when I go out my way to wind up Ireland fans, I'm mostly talking to Leinster fans, and some people, Tom Savage, who I know for a fact knows better, is like in our replies quoting drill at me and stuff, and it's a bit like, guys, that was so obvious. He's obviously going to catch a lot of heat, catch a lot of attention. I think a lot of people have maybe forgotten that Matt Fagerson might as well have been reported to age concern after the URC semi-final. Like the disrespect that he showed to Peter O'Mahony was unbelievable. And I think, like, I made a joke about Peter O'Mahony being picked because they think he's going to get inside the Scotland back row's heads, and that has historically been true. It makes sense. I don't think this Scotland back row is as fussed as previous back rows have been. I don't think Matt Fagerson and Jack Dempsey give a shit about Peter O'Mahony. So whether that turns whether it turns out to be genius or not, like there is a less than zero chance that Fagerson, Dempsey, and O'Mahony make it through without a yellow card on Sunday afternoon. Like that's just a guarantee. It remains to see which way it's going to go. It could be the masterstroke for Ireland because it could be that it's like same old Peter O'Mahony. It's the same as we always do, and we'll fuck it because he'll wind somebody up and they'll punch him. But I think it's more likely now than it has been before that actually that goes the other way. That's what I'm pinning my hopes on that anyway.
And like it's such a non-factor in some ways, but like Tom English referenced it on the BBC pod. These Glasgow players, Scotland players, again, it's kind of like the whole Leinster Green thing. Like Glasgow it's just a different shade of, of navy. But the Glasgow players have gone and they've won a URC. They went to Coleman Park to do that. They went to Loftus Versfeld to do that. Like since last time they played Ireland, and it would be silly of us to think that that's not a factor for their own mindset, because like the likes of Roy Darrett, Matt Fagerson, even say a Tom Jordan, who most people who don't follow the URC wouldn't know him. He's a very talented rugby player. I know he's off to Bristol, which is, I will let Patricia talk about Bristol, so that I don't get fined. But I'm sure that is a factor in Scottish mindsets, Jonny. The fact that Glasgow they've done it, like that kind of Scottish teams won't win anything has now been broken heading into the Six Nations.
Being psychological bottlers has been Scotland's biggest problem for the last probably close to a decade. Like this is the most talented crop of players that I think we've ever had, and like we couldn't win. You've got to be realistic about it. Our bottle crashed repeatedly and spectacularly when it mattered, and it still has been recently. But I think Glasgow's URC win has made a bit of a difference because that was two tough wins. Like Coleman Park and Loftus Versfeld, not easy places to go, and that's games that we were in right until the end. I genuinely think that we'd have lost to Italy last week if we were in the mindset we were in even 18 months ago. So it is different, but there's changing your mindset a little bit. There's getting used to winning a little bit. There's being grittier when you're in a game a little bit. And then there's the fact that we've not beaten Ireland in almost 10 years. and Ireland are one of the best teams in the world. So it's got to step up again this week. I think that it's potential that we can do it, but it would be the first time that it's happened, is what I would say, in a
Yeah,
long
and
time.
it's remarkable to think. Like, I think the stat that was used on the Irish Examiner pod, I'm going to say, I could be wrong, is that like Peter Mahoney's last 12 games against Scotland, he's won 11 times or something like that. Like, and it's not just him. Like, we know we're not that stupid. We know it's not just him. Jacob Stockdale scored an intercept in one of those games. He's going to be playing against Queensland Reds tonight. And I'm not dissing Jacob, but the squads change over time. But Tom, to kind of come back to Ireland, for all of the like, oh, same old, there are some big selection decisions. Henshaw and O'Mahony, probably I would say I've never seen a reaction for two Test Lions coming into an Ireland team quite like it, but I've seen a reaction to Conor Murray getting selected for Ireland a few times, and it's kind of along the same lines. But Robbie Henshaw's in great form. Peter O'Mahony will offer a lot of what Ryan Baird brought last week. Maybe not for as long. He'll probably only get about 50 minutes. Obviously there's the call at 10, Kelleher again at hooker and so on. From those big selection decisions, what catches your eye, and how do you see Ireland approaching this game with Henshaw, O'Mahony, Sheehan on the bench, for instance, Ringrose on the bench?
Yeah, look, I think Patricia and Jonny have touched on a few of them. Taking the Henshaw one first, people forget how good of a 13 Robbie Henshaw is. Like anytime he plays there for Ireland or Leinster, he's a really outstanding player. I think the slight advantage he has over Ringrose this weekend, and maybe why they've gone for him, he's more of an orthodox defender. Hugh Jones is obviously the strike runner, and he seems to be the only guy that's able to score tries against Ireland in the last 5 years. Anyway, I think Dean Ashman got one. I'm trying to count. I know it was less than five in the last 4 or 5 years, but Henshaw is a bit of a more of an orthodox defender. So I get the logic why maybe rather than seeing Ringrose shooting out of the defence, because I think Ireland will try and bully is the wrong word. Try and get at Scotland up front, and I think that's half the reason they've gone for Peter over Ryan Baird. Like Peter matches exactly what Baird did against England in the line out, probably even better. But Peter's a little bit more of a dog about him around the breakdown, and that's where Ireland are going to try and be a lot more narrow. They went wide against England because they had to, get England on the edges, but against Scotland they'll be trying to take them up front. And that's the reason for the selection on the bench as well. I think bringing on Jack, Dan Sheehan, Coleman, etc., will sort of add that a bit more on. Obviously the Crowley Prendergast one. I'm not in the camp. I don't know. I think if Crowley was picked this weekend, nobody would have had a problem. I don't know what I'm not sure what the logic is in it, or I'd like an Irish. They're never going to say it, but I'd like an Irish camp to say this is what we see or this is what we don't see. But I don't see it as a slight on Crowley at all. I think he'll come on again and make a massive difference when he does come on. And the one thing I did say after the match was I'd have no issue after the England match. I'd have no issue with Crowley starting. The one area he's definitely better than Prendergast is the ability to come on. I think he's more experienced there. So him watching the game from the sideline and coming on, whether it be 50 minutes, I trust him a lot more in that instance than Sam. And I'm not saying that's the reason for it, but I think that flipping on the other way around, I'd be more nervous with Prendergast coming on for the last half an hour trying to make something happen. Just with Crowley's experience in certain big games.
Okay,
But yeah,
can I
no,
ask you a question on that, Tom, just for a second? Because I do understand that point. Now, I could do 500 words on why I think, we might be overthinking that
of course,
decision
yeah,
and so on,
absolutely.
which you can argue both sides. But then at scrum half, Conor Murray is probably the best man to bring off the bench to close things out, for instance. But yet, his last couple of Ireland games, bar the Fiji game, he's been getting, 7 minutes, 6 minutes, 5 minutes. Likewise, Keane Healy. I suppose that's the other side of it is like, yes, Ireland used their bench better last week, but at the same time, you're looking at one or two guys and being like, what's the point in 5 minute cameos in some ways? And I don't mean that to sound disparaging. Everyone deserves their caps, but it will be what will strike some people's minds as well.
Yeah, look, I think Keane Healy has sort of run his course. You know what I mean? He's absolutely. I think he's possibly only there because some of our other loose hearts are in slightly in different form. and he can play 1, 2, and 3. And obviously that's happened against Scotland before, where Josh van der Fleer had to play hooker for a while, and Cian Healy did.
I don't recall. You might need to change your background again for me to remember.
I can put another. I have a slideshow.
Surely
It's fine
Scotland
to
won.
just don't do that.
Surely Scotland won that game with Josh van der Fleer throwing into the line.
I'm just going to Google it here, Patricia, and say no. I think Healy was playing hooker and Josh was throwing it in. No, I think Ireland still won that game. Comfortable enough, actually. I think Scotland.
I've almost got a bonus point as well. Imagine that.
Scotland kept 1-2.
We got very lucky because we arsed up a line out on our own line, and then after Ireland scored, they brought it back because we used the wrong ball. Like, that was prime comedy Scotland, that one.
As they say, you know, Scotland could beat anyone on that day. That day just happens to be the 30th of February. But
anyways, back to you, Tom, as we were saying.
Where was I? Yeah, we were talking. Who were we talking about? We were talking about
Cian Healy, the ghost of Cian Healy.
Yeah, Cian Healy. Yeah, and Conor Murray. Look, I think in some ways, Ireland is a little bit French, as in we play about a lot off 9. And the discussion, we are overthinking the discussion of Jack and Sam. I think I'd have no issue with either of them starts. I think we're lucky enough to have the two of them, but I would have had no issue with Crowley start. But we play so much off 9, and Gibson Park is probably more important than either of the 2 10s. That's not disparaging either of the lads. That maybe that's why Conor does come on late. I'd say if Craig was fit, he'd probably be filling that slot. No, nothing against Conor Murray, but yeah, look, I think that's something for the summer. Cian and a few of the lads, it's time to hopefully finish off with 3 in a row in the Six Nations. Would be great for those lads. They've been great servants. So it is a bit odd, but I think they're there if the shit hits the fan and you get certain injuries in certain places and you're able to bring on that type of experience. That's possibly the reason, and maybe the guys just underneath that haven't quite stepped up, or maybe they've been lucky with injury with like Lockman or too young like Boyle or something like that. They're just not quite there yet.
Do you think Healy and Murray and maybe O'Mahony as well are still in the Ireland squad because there's a plan for them to go to Australia in the summer? Like, are they staying unretired so they can go for another Lions tour?
I'd be unsurprised if he brought Murray. Yeah, I'd be unsurprised if he brought Murray, to be honest, because he loves Conor Murray, that guy. But
there's not a lot of great scrum halves at the moment.
As you should, he's better than any of the Scottish scrum halves. He's better. England don't know who their scrum half is. Like, Wales are Wales. So, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes in the summer. Healy, I think that would be a bit of a piss take now, to be honest. He'd probably die on the flight over. He's so old. Like, he wouldn't make it. But it's one of those things. I think, Tom, what you were saying about the 10 debate as it's become this huge thing, when I think neither player really wanted to be.
Stop calling it a debate? It's a culture war at this stage.
Yeah, neither player wanted to be in the middle of that. Like, and neither player I don't think deserves to be in the middle of that either. Like, they're 2 young guys who, like, leave them alone to an extent. But I think a lot of people's maybe frustration about it is, Crowley had to win the URC essentially to prove, in quotes, that he was ready to back up Johnny Sexton, whereas Sam Prendergast has not had to do that maybe, and hasn't like really even proved himself in like the biggest games for Leinster. And then you have this thing where, in my opinion anyway, if Crowley had started last week and put in the performance that Prendergast put in, and Ireland had been behind when he went off, I don't think he would be given the opportunity to start again in this game. And I think that that's where a lot of people's frustration maybe comes from. Like, I personally I agree with you in that I think Crowley's a very good substitute at the moment. Like, he's proving every time he comes on off the bench, like he's putting in, sort of 8 out of 10 performances with, making it to teams of the week when he was on for 20 minutes kind of thing. But I think that people are just looking at it different ways, and it's become such a big thing. And I think a part of that falls on the IRFU as well. I think they've let it become this big thing, things like putting them up for the press the week of the Australia game, and sort of, I think that they've mistreated both of their players in this as well, more than like the public have, and the public are kind of losing their heads a little bit over it at the same time.
You'll always have that. I think that's the one thing about, like, you will always have people, once there is a phone in someone's hand, you will have someone who will just be a complete arse about things.
People have lost the ability to be normal. Like, these are just guys playing a game ultimately, like, and people are sort of talking about it like, Jack Crowley came and took their house, like Jack Crowley keyed my wife's car at the weekend, he shouldn't play for Ireland ever again. And it's people have gotten very, very strange about it in particular. I don't know if they're like, I don't know what it is. I think someone made a very good point, and that, when it was O'Gara and Humphreys, there was a huge age difference between the two of them. When it was Sexton and O'Gara, there was a huge age difference between the age of them. And now they're sort of talking like it's that again, whereas Jack Crowley is still also incredibly young. Like they're saying, well, Jack Crowley is Sam Prendergast is the young future. Like, so is Jack Crowley. He's 25. It's not exact, he's not 37-year-old Johnny Sexton. So I think I think people have just lost the run of themselves, to be honest.
Yeah, I think the biggest comment that surmises losing the run themselves. And look, Tom Jordan could well prove me wrong and be an unbelievable player for Bristol. But hearing Irish pundits say Sam Prendergast played well in big games like Bristol is an absolute joke. Like, I'm sorry, lads, but like, come on. Like, Sam has played well in big games for Leinster. I will say that. Bristol is not a big game. Like, Leinster have gone nearly 10 years without losing to a Premiership team, not lame Saracens.
When you play in the Six Nations, you haven't got Geordie Barrett to hold your hand and tell you where to stand off attacking scrums. So like it is a step up, and I think that he kind of felt that last week against England to an extent. That's not an autumn international friendly game against Australia, even though that was a hard game. Like that was a step up again. I think it's good for him to get those as well. Like I just think the questions around whether he's like quote unquote earned it or whatever are valid enough at the moment.
I think what might have added into as well, because apart from the Northampton game where Crowley came back with a bang and he was outstanding, his form up to that was quite poor by his standards. So maybe that led into why maybe they were going to look at Prendergast. I'm not in the mind of Easterby, but it was definitely Crowley back with a bang against Northampton. Again, it's to paraphrase Bristol, it's only an English team in Europe. So by our standards, that is, do we bait him with the same stick?
Yeah,
or is Northampton better with Bristol?
That's not for me to say.
What? Even with a brief pause there, Tom, you did a really good job to correct yourself and pretend that Easterby's in charge of this Ireland team, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
Good job sticking to the script.
I'd just like to say that was not me who said that. That came from the Isles that are now currently being.
But one last thing I'd say
supervised by David
one last thing I'd say is with we're talking about Sam and Crowley winning against Bristol or Northampton. I think Glasgow haven't won away in Europe in 5 years. So, there is steps up on performance. I know winning a URC is one thing, but I think La Rochelle, like 5 years ago, was the last time they won away from Europe. So these Scottish lads have to step up again before the Six
Johnny,
Nations.
I might talk to you off air about winning away in La Rochelle if you feed us a few secrets there.
Listen, if Benetton could do it can't be that difficult. And some of the dross that's gone to the Aviva and won recently, I fancy our chances in the quarterfinals.
Look, this is not a Champions Cup podcast, but I do respect Tom's commitment to the bit to go after Glasgow's form, because it has been,
I tell you who should have gone after Glasgow's form. Referees in the early 2010s when they were flying into those rucks.
We can still remember how to do that, by the way. You'll find that out on Sunday.
That's a jar of worms I do not want to open about Munster Glasgow 2016. Three of the
Conor
best
Murray,
days.
if you're listening, please do not come on the pitch on Sunday. It's too dangerous. You have a son now, Conor. It's too dangerous.
Lock up your standing legs, Conor.
Anywho, before we move on, if you do like to see you're here for whatever stupid reason, please do subscribe. If you do leave a review, it makes all the difference. I know we've had a few reviews left recently, which made me happy, and some of them gave me an odd chuckle. All 15 senior games of the men's Six Nations will be covered, as well as the 5 Ireland under-20 games, and we will have coverage of the women's Six Nations coming up in March as well, so stay tuned for that. But we will move on to the Scottish side, named by Gregor Townsend today, which sees just 3 changes, but a return to the 6-2 bench split. Starting off at fullback for them, it is Blair Kinghorn of Toulouse. Darcy Graham and Duhan van der Merwe are on the wings, with Hugh Jones and the very well mentioned Tom Jordan in the centres. Finn Russell is co-captain, and Ben White, not of Arsenal, is the scrum half. Roy Sutherland, Dave Sherry and Xander Ferguson make up a fierce front row. It's Johnny Gray and Grant Gilchrist, the experienced second row pairing, with Jack Dempsey coming in at 6, Rory Darge, the other co-captain, we'll get your thoughts on that in a minute, Patricia, and Matt Ferguson making out the back row. Ewan Ashman, Pierre Schumann and Will Hurd cover the front row from the bench, with Sam Skinner, Gregor Brown and Jamie Ritchie completing the 6 forwards on the bench. Jamie Dobie covers 9 and wing, while Stafford McDowell rounds out the bench. Johnny, this is a Scotland team that, depending on who you ask, could be, arrogant, flamboyant, they're past their peak. They could be all about to be the Lions player. It depends on who you ask. But this is still a Scotland team that can get at Ireland. And you look at, obviously, the back line we're going to talk about. The back row is pretty strong. Like, there's not really a weakness there, apart from maybe hooker and line out that might discuss later. It's pretty solid.
Yeah, one thing it does have, and Alan from our pod mentioned it earlier when the team came up in our group chat, is it's got what he calls a high BQ, which is bastard quotient, and that is like, it is the fightiest Scotland team we could have possibly put up. I think Rory Sutherland coming in instead for Pierre Schumann was kind of like what kind of twigged people on to the fact that might be happening, because Shuey's obviously a cult hero in Scotland, but he is a bit of like a, like big cuddly bear sort of. He's a hard carrier, but he's a smiley, like cuddly sort of. Rory Sutherland is not that. Jack Dempsey coming back in for Jamie Ritchie, and like, don't get me wrong, Jamie Ritchie loves a battle, but Jack Dempsey is the biggest bastard that Scotland have had for a long time. So it's our most combative pack by a long, long way. Like you said earlier, there's a lot of people who don't know who Tom Jordan is. I think they're going to know who he is by the end of Sunday, win or lose. He is a fantastic player. A few of us kind of saw him coming through the Super Six with Ayrshire Bulls, and it was a bit weird because when he first came on the scene, we'd watch the Bulls and be a bit like, oh, is this like the level of what we're getting from the Super Six? He might get a handful of Glasgow games, and then he came to Glasgow and he played a couple of times, and most of us were like, oh, I guess he might be all right. And then 18 months later, we're like, oh, well, we might get a look at him in a Scotland shirt. I guess he might be okay as an international. And then he made his debut against Fiji in the autumn and just looked like somebody who had decided that they were going to be great at international rugby. He just appears to have like stepped in and gone, yeah, I could do this. No bother. He was fantastic when he came on Saturday afternoon against Italy. Used to be a forward.
Can I ask a question on Tom Jordan? I know he's going to dominate a lot of the focus, and I will mention him in the preview article that I'll write as well, because I think it's a snapshot is how Scotland want to play. But
make sure and mention his tackle technique, Caelan.
I forgot that was him, actually.
I can't believe we're still talking about
so,
this.
Two
Have
questions.
I not suffered enough?
2 questions. No. Patricia was there, actually. Did she ever tell you that she was?
Yeah, well, she was sitting beside me.
I know. She's said it enough times.
It's in the video. It's in the video.
We'll post the GIF. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
You've got an elbow on one side and a fucking piss-eating face there on the other side.
It's how close you were to hitting me in the face. I've got my head in my hands, and you're like elbows up in my face.
What I was going to ask about Tom Jordan, and it's kind of the forbidden word of podcast during the Six Nations, is there a Lions poacher there for him potentially? Because
no, he's Scottish.
He can play 3 positions. Yeah, I get that. But he can play 3 positions. 10 is not nailed down, and fullback's not nailed down.
No, I think I would love Tom Jordan to go in the Lions. And I think what he's got going for him is, like you say, he is more than competent in 3 positions. Tom Jordan's not a test lion by any stretch of the imagination, but you need people who can play in those midweek games. And nobody can cover 3 positions. Nobody in the 4 countries could cover 3 positions to as high a level as he could play all 3 positions. So something like that's invaluable.
We all had. I think me and Caelan's brain went, I'm pretty sure Jack Riley plays those 3 positions. Carry on.
Well, he's not as good as Tom Jordan, or he'd be starting for Ireland. So
if people are listening to this on audio, this is the moment where Jonny's audio accidentally cut out and we never see him again.
No,
but,
Jonny returned to his home planet.
I think that's the sort of thing that's valuable on a tour like that. So I could see him going. He's this year's Elliot Daly. Yeah, exactly. He wouldn't be one of the Scotland players that you'd be like, he's the one that you want for the Lions. But the skill set that he's got makes him pretty valuable, because you can use him in every midweek game in different positions if you need to.
Yeah,
I think if he wants to go on the Lions, maybe he should give Tom Court a ring, because if he's on holidays in Australia, he might get a call up.
Well, he's from New Zealand, so he'll be close enough.
Well, there we are. He'll just randomly be across the water just when there's about 25 injuries.
I mean, lest we forget, Finn Russell was one of the Geography 6. Russell was one of them. Yeah.
Alan Dale just retired this afternoon, and in his retirement post, he put a picture of him in Lions kit in his retirement post. He is
I love that. I'm going to have to go give that a like, because that's the kind of shit housing that I absolutely love. Because I was young at the time. I was able to feel, oh my God, why is this like called up? And now, like, fair play to him. I have a bit of Freudian slip in the notes. I did say, where do you think England can hurt Ireland? Look, there's a lot of Scottish players with English accents, but we won't get into that because then we get into a conversation about Doohan and the boys. But Tom,
Hmm.
we mentioned that back row. I think Johnny said they're full of bastards. I think was the word you used. I can't remember which.
That came
It's
so
still...
unnaturally to you. It was really funny.
No, it's not. I'm just trying to look professional. But it is a Scotland pack though. It's smaller than Ireland's, it's less experienced than Ireland's. But it's still like pretty decent. Like you could make a case there. Like Roy Sutherland was a lion, to just use that parlance. Sander Ferguson, Matt Ferguson, Johnny Gray, Rory Darge, if they all got picked this year, no one would have any arguments. And Rory Darge in particular, he's co-captain, balk, but he is a terrific player, and he is going to be someone that Ireland really need to get a handle on, isn't
Yeah, look, I think Scotland realise, and maybe that's the logic in what Johnny's saying, that if they don't win some sort of parity up front, because I think in the last 4 or 5 games they've lost out on the possession stats against Ireland, so they struggle to get the ball against Ireland, and if they struggle to get the ball, their backs don't get the ball as much. And as I said, I think they've in the last 4 or 5 games they've only scored 1 try. I know they scored 2 in the World Cup when they were after being 36-0 down, but other than that, it's been 1 try. So, and that comes from the forwards not winning the sort of at least parity up front. So I get the logic of Townsend if he's making those changes to bring a bit of dog and a bit of change. There's no point in going with the same thing again and expecting the same results. The players aren't obviously magically going to get 10% better. So he needs to make a few changes of what he wants to do. And then he's got the benefit of bringing Schumann off the bench to maybe go after Clarkson in the last, 20 minutes or something like that. So that's, I get the logic. He has to do something different. But if they don't win sort of parity up front, now I don't mean scrums and Josh Van der Fleer throwing in lineouts or anything like that. It's about just contact area where they've lost out before, where Ireland have just won those physical contact battles, and maybe that's the logic. Townsend, as Johnny alluded to, what they're trying to bring, a bit more edge, bit more fight, and there's no question if that Scottish backline get decent amount of ball, they'll hurt most teams, but I don't know if the correlation is there between struggling to get possession against Ireland and not really scoring tries. I'm sure it is. Got some link there, but that's been the problem before. But some of their strike players are obviously in great form. Kinghorn's playing great stuff for Toulouse. Hugh Jones again seems to be in the form of his life. Funny enough, Russell, who's sort of the anchorman of it all, his form is a little bit up and down. He's depends what Finn turns up. If Finn hasn't had a great time against Ireland or Blue Ireland, for want of Johnny's expression, anytime he's played them. So it'll be interesting to see. It's time for the Lions incumbent 10 to sort of show what he's worth as well. It's a big match by Russell if Scotland are going to win this match, because a few times he's not sort of stepped up to the mark that needs to be to win in those big games, whether it be against Ireland or South Africa or France. He's just sort of slightly fallen off the edge. But yeah, no, I'm not overly worried is the wrong word. It's an interesting bench Scotland have picked. Like, it's not, I rate Stafford McDowell. I think he's a classy player. You see him, and obviously Shuey, but Jimmy Ritchie, yeah, but I wouldn't be losing sleep about what's on the bench compared to what Ireland can bring off the bench. That's just me calling it as I see it. But maybe Johnny will have a different opinion, and fair enough. But it's not a bench. It's like I'm going to be overly worried about in the last 20 minutes, apart from maybe Shuey getting a Clarkson. But Clarkson did well against Genge in the few scrums it was on. So Clarkson will just have to do the basics, lock that scrum out and, lifting the line out, do the basics, do the bull haze. The ABCs have been a good tight head. And it'll be interesting to see where Scotland think they can make changes in that bench. Johnny might come back and see where he sees the last 20 minutes with some of those players coming off the bench, what they can do maybe to counteract what Ireland will be bringing on at the same time in Sheehan, Coleman especially, and Crowley.
Yeah, definitely. Johnny, I might bring in there because obviously so much been said about Ireland's bench, not just here, but in France, on the BBC and so on last week, because it was the changing of the game. For Scotland, Ewan Ashman is a good player. I think it should be said. Pierre Schumann is obviously Pierre Schumann. Like, he doesn't need explanation. He's likely to be Andrew Porter's backup on the Lions tour. You'd assume Porter starts. Will Hurd, Gregor Brown are inexperienced, but you kind of have a bit of everything there. It's the 6-2 part though that you do wonder. Like, would you have gone that way yourself up against this Ireland team?
No, I probably have had another back, but then I am a back. So
There we go.
I think there's good flexibility in the two guys that are on the bench. Jamie Dobie is a much better winger than I think a lot of people, including me, give him credit for someone who spent his whole career playing scrum half up until 2 years ago. Staff obviously was thought good enough to be a starter last week. I think TJ brings a lot more as a starter, but I think Staff will bring some fairly interesting options off the bench. He's huge for a start. I'd probably have had an extra back, but unfortunately, unlike Ireland, and unlike, to be honest, probably everybody outside of Wales, we don't really have the luxury of options that other people have. Second row especially. Gregor Brown and Sam Skinner, good players. Gregor Brown can play second row or he could play back row. Sam Skinner, I loved, but he's kind of dipping a little bit. This would be a whole different conversation if we had Sione fit, and I think probably more pertinently if we had Scott Cummings fit, because second row is the one that really worries me when it comes to bench time on Sunday afternoon. Our starting second row, one of them should be on the bench. Probably Jonny Gray, because I don't think he's 100% fit. So, that means we've got a bench quality second row starting, and then the second row that's coming off the bench is the one that wouldn't have been in the 23 if we had all our choices.
Jonny, was it Cummins that got sent off the time the Scottish lineout, once it fell apart is probably an exaggeration. Was it him that got a red card in one big game? It was Six Nations or World Cup. I'm trying to remember.
Most likely Cummings
I
loves
think
a
it
red
was.
card.
I think it was.
Yeah.
It was Cummings that got the 20-minute red against South Africa. He loves a red card.
Yes, that's what it was.
Unfortunately, he's a quality player, but he does love a bit of a. He's disciplinary interesting.
But I think
But he'll still get
yeah.
that. He'll
Yeah, sorry,
still get
Patricia.
that 3 weeks. He'll still get that 3 week mitigation every time, though. So you need to worry about it.
Oh,
That's
no.
because he's smart enough to do a different thing every time. You see, he's never been sent off for the same thing twice.
The only reason I brought it up was because I do distinctly remember the Scottish lineout sort of, I won't say fell apart, but when he was off, it made a big difference to.
Yeah, and you've rightly pointed out already, like the lineout is going to be an issue. Dave Cherry throws great lineouts most of the time. Ewan Ashman throws really good lineouts most of the time, but we are missing a lot of our lineout operators. And like, as much as he is a disaster in some areas, Scott Cummings keeps our lineout going. Grant Gilchrist is a great lineout caller, but I don't think Jonny Gray's 100% fit. I don't think both of them can go 80 minutes, and then what's coming on is players that, all things considered, wouldn't have been in the 23. So it's that middle part of the pack that I'm most concerned about. It's the line out and it's the second rows, and I don't think we've got the power on the bench to compete with what Ireland are bringing on in that area. I think Shuey and Ashman will be huge off the bench. Ashman for me should be starting. Shuey obviously is our regular starter, so they'll be huge. Jamie Ritchie will keep up the intensity that the starting back row have got. Jamie Ritchie is an animal, and he'll be fuming that he's not starting again this week. So he'll want to come on at 100 miles an hour. It's the middle bit of the forwards that I'm mostly concerned about, and that counts for all the way through from minute 1 to minute 80. I don't think our locks are as good as the Ireland locks. They're obviously not the locks that we wanted to be playing. I think the locks that are coming off the bench are pretty concerning. Everything else I'm pretty happy with.
No, that's fair. And before we move on to predictions, I want to get your take, Patricia, because to Scotland's credit, they probably produced their best or most refined defensive performance last year against Ireland of the Six Nations. Like they really shut Ireland down. It took an overthrown line out and some, just some patience for Ireland to finally get a score. But considering you usually have to score about 25 points to beat Ireland, and Scotland's highest points tally in the last 4 games is 14 points, all of which when, as Tom alluded to, they were already 36-0 down in that game of the World Cup. That has to be a concern for them. Like, how does Scotland go about accumulating points? They've got a great place kicker, and Ireland's discipline has been shaky at times, but they need more than just going 3-6-9, don't they?
They probably do, but I do think as well, like they should probably look at the game last week because, you know, they scored a shit ton more tries than Italy did. Like Italy scored what, one try in that whole game, and Scotland got a bonus point, yet at some point they were 19 all. So I think that they can probably look at, you know, turning around and suddenly this team who they've been shutting out the whole game was level with them and sort of think, oh, we could do that to Ireland. I think that there is a balance to be struck between taking the three and going to the corner. And I think Scotland maybe last week were on the wrong side of that a little bit. I agree with what Jonny said about the line out. I think the swing of sort of them losing Scott Cummings and Ireland bringing in Peter O'Mahony, who, like, whatever you think about him, has consistently been one of the best line out operators in the world for years and years and years. So he's like so accomplished in that specifically. You know, maybe they've put Ewan Ashman on the bench for Dan Sheehan, but then like I don't think there's anybody in the world who can combat Dan Sheehan really. And he's actually a freak of nature. Like it's actually almost annoying. Like even though you watch him and like he's on your team with Ireland, but like when you watch him play for Leinster, you're like, that just go away. Like this is actually really irritating having that player be that good. And you really thank your stars he's kind of on your team. I think that Scotland are ballers, you know, like Scotland can score a lot of tries, but then they just seem to not do it against Ireland. It's like it sounds really rudimentary to be like, just play against Ireland the same way you play against every other team, and they'd probably win because like they tend to score a lot of points in general. Like they score tries even when they're not playing very well. You look at last week, I thought Finn Russell had a howler last week. I'm a big Finn Russell fan. And he did not play well last week at all, but they were still scoring tries, like they were still creating stuff. So if they can just sort of whatever like tiny little mental block that they seem to have with Ireland. Like Ireland are not that big and scary. It's a team full of old men ultimately. Like if you look at, you know, Ireland as just another rugby team, there's no reason that Scotland can't beat them. But then ultimately like that's on paper and rugby teams are played on grass, you know, like and when Ireland plays Scotland on grass, like they just don't seem to ever show up. Like it's, you know, you should be scared of playing Scotland and then ultimately you kind of remember that it's Scotland against Ireland, so you're just not as scared anymore. So I don't know what they can do other than just sort of pretend it's England. I don't know.
I think I know. Well, I'm actually not great with images, but if I was, I'd just have Finn Russell Spurs crest for the YouTube thumbnail. I think that's the most. I think that's what you're alluding to there. But to their credit, I do think this is going to be a tight game, and I think our predictions will probably reflect that. Tom, I'll start with yourself. Who do you see winning this one, and how do you see it unfolding?
Using Patricia's words at the start about Ireland, it's the same Ireland. And she's right. It's the same Ireland. What more can we say about this Irish team apart from the one or two guys like Prendergast and Clarkson? I have the same feeling about this game and using the same words. I think Ireland will win again. I'm not sure Scotland have got the weapons needed in the forwards over the 80 minutes to punish Ireland and get sort of that high 50% possession that they need. On Scotland's side, if Scotland can get a lot of ball, this will go right down to the wire. I think it'll go right down to the wire anyway. I can't imagine it being any more than a one-score game either way, regardless of who dominates up front or who dominates possession or territory. Because it's in Murrayfield. But yeah, I think Ireland again for a lot of the reasons we've mentioned that just that sort of enough. It's not like you're demolishing Scotland up front. It's not, because Scotland are gnarly bastards around the breakdown, and like, you know, the jokes about Leinster and Munster players flying in off their feet. I think Scotland and Glasgow have definitely copied that, because it'll be a free for all, and you know the referee will have a lot to say on how he interprets that, but like the breakdown is always a huge battle between Ireland and Scotland. But it's just that contact area where Scotland have lost out, and unless they've been on the protein shakes for the last 6 months, I don't know where they're going to get the extra pounds of muscle. I do share Johnny's fears that England made a mistake last week not going after Ireland's line out. They put 1.5 jumpers at best against Ireland's 3. Ireland have gone 3 again. The Scottish line out over 80 minutes had their issues against Italy. I think Ireland will get enough ball off the line out again and maybe not 23 from 23 this time like it was last week, but it'll get enough ball that they'll cause Scotland problem. But it's not like getting first phase moves or first phase tries off those lineouts. It's just Scotland being able to get out of the 22 or out of the 30 and just eventually getting worn down by the physicality of Irish carries from Porter or Byrne or Ryan or Coleman when he comes on or Sheehan comes on. So that's where I see the problem. It's Scotland's problem is getting enough ball to that back line. If they can do that, they could win the game. But I have my doubts because I don't see where the whatever with the forwards they've picked, to start a fight. And Jonny's right, the hooker Ashman and Shuey will make a difference, but I wouldn't be overly worried about the rest of the pack coming on. If the game is close. But yeah, I think Ireland by 7 or less than 7, 5 to 7 points. I think we'll probably see it out.
Yeah, that's the way I'm leaning as well. I do think I can see a reality where Ireland are once again trailing with 30 minutes to go and claw it back. I can see a situation where, like Murrayfield 3 years ago, there's no reason why Ireland should be ahead, or 2 years ago, there's no reason why Ireland should be ahead at halftime, and they are, and they kick on. Like I can see it go both ways. The one thing that struck me, and I tried to look into it for my preview article that'll be up tomorrow, Saturday, is efficiency has been massive. Red zone efficiency. I know it's Super Bowl weekend. I'm not saying it just because of that weekend, but red zone efficiency is so important at test level. And Ireland have gone from a team who were one of the most efficient in the Six Nations to middle of the pack. They've changed a style that looks to be more like Italy than, say, like France, when, in my opinion, and we can talk about this in 3 or 4 years' time, revisit it, I think the game is going towards a more jouet style, the way the laws are. But the reason that Scotland have been so inefficient against Ireland compared to other teams is Ireland's defence is so strong. And we spoke about, the centre pairing being a part of that. Ireland's red zone defence is really strong because of the defensive ruck work has been so sharp, and just that power game. You take Tui Pilato out of it, I think we could see a situation where Scotland boss the middle third of the field, but again lose the battle in the 222s, and ultimately that could cost them. But I do think Ireland, if they show the second half that they showed last weekend, they win this game by 10 or more. I think they show the first half they showed last weekend, I think they lose this week. So I think that's the thing. Ireland need to go back to being the consistent, old, reliable. The team sheet is reliable. I'm not sure if what's on the field matches that anymore. But Jonny, look, I'm not going to dub it as Scottish arrogance if you say Scotland by 40. I'm not even going to say it if you say Scotland by 1. But a lot of Scottish hype was muted when Sione went down before that Harlequins game. But this does feel like, to use the term Warren Gatland used last week, the biggest game in years. It really does feel like that for Scotland.
Is it Scotland's year at last?
Stop saying that. As on the one hand, stop saying that. On the other hand, we will never have a better chance to beat Ireland in these kind of two current iterations. I think if Sione was fit, we'd be having an entirely different conversation. I'd be a lot more confident. I think it comes down to two things. One that Patricia touched on, one that Tom did, and the first one is the psychology of Scotland. Like Patricia said, I was sitting kind of thinking about it as we were going through that last bit. I'd say there's maybe 3 positions, hooker, second row, and 12, where Ireland have a clear advantage. Like, Kelleher's much better than Dave Cherry. Tadhg much better than any other second row on the field. As much as I love Tom Jordan, Bundy probably is better than Tom Jordan. There's one where Scotland have a clear advantage. Like, on and off day, Finn Russell is still better than Sam Prendergast. Like, that's just not a debate. Other than that, we're pretty evenly matched across the field. So, Scotland shouldn't be going out and saying this is a much better team than us, because with the best will in the world and not trying to sound #Scottish arrogance, they're not. Like, the majority of the positions are even, could go either way. The difference is that Ireland think they're a much better team than us, and so does Scotland. So
I don't think it's arrogance to say Jack Dempsey's as good as Caelan Doris. No, not a bit.
Well, I'm glad you agree, Tom. I think that we have to get over
that's
that.
your captain, Caelan Doris, to you, Tom.
He'll come off the bench in the Lions test when Jack Dempsey's tired, so we are at least kind of even. And to be honest, I think we have to get over that. Like, Scotland are going out, or have gone out historically, thinking Ireland are a better team than them. And for the majority of the positions, it's pretty even. So Scotland have to think that they can beat them. But the problem is, Blair Kinghorn said that we thought we could beat them in the World Cup, and then we got panelled and we got called arrogant.
Well,
But
to be
we
fair,
have to
he
kind of
didn't
strike
say
a
that.
balance.
He did say, I think their winning run might come to an end, which compared to Hugh Jones's answer of, look, we have to believe we can win. They're very different sides of it now.
And like the thing is, like we have to get more of that. Like we have to believe that we can win. We have
I
to,
think the
like
problem
Patricia
with
says,
Blair
they're
Kinghorn
not a big
is
scary team.
he spent too much time with Antoine Dupont, and then he realizes that, you know, when Antoine Dupont's not there, it's actually much harder to beat every team in the world.
Yeah. And then the other thing, like Tom said, is the breakdown. And I was actually going to ask you guys if you are concerned that Ireland got refereed at the breakdown correctly for the first time in about 5 years for parts of last Saturday. But the thing is that Scotland have this thing, and Scottish teams, Glasgow have kind of got out of it a little bit recently. Edinburgh are still in it. The national team, sadly, are a bit still in it. Scotland have this thing where if they're getting bullied at the breakdown, they stand there and go, "Sir, he shouldn't be doing that. Sir, he's off his feet. Sir, he's coming in from the side. Sir, he shouldn't be doing that," and just get dominated at the breakdown. Now, I am a very old, cynical rugby player, and that's not what I would do. If Ireland are getting away with murder at the breakdown, start murdering people at the breakdown too. Like if they're getting away with it, you start doing it until somebody's not getting away with it anymore. So I've got quite a different take to a lot of Scottish people on the breakdown because of the way that the team behaves. A lot of Scottish fans just naturally jump to, well, people get away with murder against us at the breakdown and it's not fair. Whereas I'm a bit like, well, if people are getting away with murder at the breakdown, we fucking start doing it as well until someone gets told to stop. So if Scotland can match Ireland at the breakdown, and by which I mean cheat as much as Ireland at the breakdown, then it becomes a lot more of an interesting game. If Scotland can kind of get over their psychological hump, it becomes a lot more interesting game. I think we'll win. I think 22-19, something like that. I think, you know, everybody in Scotland knows this is our best chance to beat them. Murrayfield will be jumping on Sunday afternoon. The players know it's our best chance to beat them. Like, Andy Farrell realistically has got to text Easterby with what he wants Ireland to do. He's going to be in the stadium. He's still in charge of the team. Everybody knows it. He wasn't even trying to hide it last weekend. But nominally, he's not in charge. We're at home. I think this is our best chance, and everyone knows it. I think what's going to happen is we beat Ireland. We lose to England. We don't get a bonus point against Wales. We get panelled by France, and we still finish third. And Gregor Townsend keeps his job, and nobody's happy. Is essentially what I think is going to happen this weekend.
That takes. I'm just going to call it Celtic misery this time to a whole new level. So we've got 2 for Ireland, 1 for Scotland. Patricia, you have the chance to stamp on your dear friend Jonny's heart right now and say Ireland by 100. But I'll let you go whatever way you feel like.
I mean, to be fair, I did think while he was making that little fucking Braveheart speech there, I was like, that's lovely, but it's going to be really funny when Ireland are sort of 20 points up after 10 minutes. But I think, as much as I'm loath to give it to him, I think a lot of what he said was right. I do think that these teams are the most evenly matched on paper they've been in a long time, it feels like. You know, not necessarily like the names of the players, but like where the players are sort of in their careers. Ireland seem to be sort of heading towards the other side of the hill, I'd say. I don't know if they're fully like on that downswing yet. It might be like one last ride kind of thing, but their team is getting old, whereas most teams are getting younger. But I think that if Scotland are to win this game, I mean, they'll have to be ahead by like 15 points, I think, with 20 to go, because I think that, you know, Dan Sheehan's got to try in, and, you know, Jack Crowley will crossfield kick to someone and they'll score. I think that there has to be a sort of a buffer there for Scotland. I think if when Ireland start unloading the bench, like, because Jack Conan, who's a player who, like, I never really know what to think about, because I thought he was sort of bumbling along, being pretty mid to average for like years, and then he went on that last Lions tour and had 3 of the best games I've ever seen anyone play in the 3 tests, and then he kind of went back to just being, you know, good. And then he
Was there a Lions tour 4 years ago? I didn't know
no,
this.
there wasn't. But and then I thought he was very good off the bench last week as well. So like you have that sort of Conan, Sheehan, Crowley, like, and to an extent Ringrose, like that sort of punch in the face for a team. I think that Scotland would need to have a buffer. I don't know if they can sort of fight it out in the way that they did against Italy against this Ireland team, sort of as that game goes on. Whether they have that buffer or not, like, kind of feels like it's up to Ireland to an extent. Like there were issues in Ireland's defense last week. I know you obviously reviewed the game, but like you know, the sort of efficiency, the thing with Ireland is that like they've always scored off a 5 meter line out. They weren't doing that last week. Like they left tries behind them. If they do that again and they let Scotland into the game, Scotland would score tries easier than England did last week, I think. I think Scotland would score sort of 3 tries in the amount of effort it took England to score 1 last week. So I do see a possibility where sort of Ireland let Scotland build up a bit of a lead, where like Scotland score a few sort of early on. But then like I think this every year, and sort of every year then you realise, oh yeah, like it is Ireland playing Scotland ultimately. Like I said, you know, on paper these teams are evenly matched, but like the game's going to be played on the pitch, like it's actually not going to be played on paper at all. So I do ultimately think Ireland will win, but I think like last week it'll be a bit nervy, it'll be close. I think the lead will switch a couple of times. I'd say Scotland will get 1 to 2 bonus points. Like it'll either be, you know, sort of like 35-28 or whatever, or it'll be like, you know, 19-15 or something like that. But it'll be, I think, Ireland by, like Tom said, less than 7.
I'd be buzzing with 2 bonus points, by the way. I would take that.
That loser ass mentality. Like that's why that's the Scottish psychology problem. It's like, oh, wouldn't it be great to show up against Ireland and get 2 bonus points? Like,
listen, those 2 bonus points in Toulon got us a home tie in the last 16 for Glasgow. So 2 bonus points is fine by me.
I would say, oh, they need to bring in Franco Smith if that's their mindset. But fuck, if Franco Smith would be an improvement. I don't want to see that.
Yeah. I don't want Franco to go, but I do want him to be at Scotland eventually.
Yeah.
Franco Smith, a coach with hair, famously better than a bald coach. Therefore, Scotland by 20 at the weekend. No, yeah, I think Ireland, but I do think it'll be close. I think it'll be a nervy game, quite like last week was, like an uncomfortable one to watch from an Ireland point of view.
I can definitely see that. And with that, that's all we have time for. My thanks to Patricia, to Tom, and to our special guest, Jonny. Like the fact that we had two Munster people and a Glasgow fan on this podcast, and we didn't just try and dox each other and go after each other is remarkable. Well done to everyone.
I'm going right back on the Blue Sky to get back onto it, don't
worry. For anyone at home, you can catch this one on Sunday afternoon on RT2 and BBC One. We kick off at 3 p.m. Well, we'll be back later that evening with a review of the 3 senior games, including Le Crunch and Wales against Italy, and the Under-20 Slash, which also takes place on Saturday night, also live on RT. If you'd like to see it here, please do subscribe for the busiest term of the season. And you can find us on all good platforms, be it YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and so on. You can find the links to my channels below. But for now, and until we're back on Sunday, until next time, take it easy.